Mother Bear slept with thee alone. Human baby in the hospital. What happened next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The rain hammered against the windows of Riverside General Hospital like angry fists. Inside room 314, tiny Mia Chen lay wrapped in a soft pink blanket, her small chest rising and falling in peaceful sleep. The newborn had been born just 12 hours ago, but her parents weren't there beside her crib. Grace Chen had collapsed from exhaustion after a difficult labor, and doctors rushed her to surgery for emergency complications. Her husband, David, paced the surgical waiting room 3 floors below, his hands shaking as he checked his phone every few seconds. Neither of them knew that their baby girl was completely alone on the 3rd floor. The maternity ward was unusually quiet that night. Nurse Patricia Williams had called in sick with the flu, leaving only one nurse to handle the entire floor. Sandra Martinez, the remaining nurse, was overwhelmed with paperwork and hadn't checked on baby Mia in over 2 hours. Outside the hospital, the storm grew stronger. Trees bent against the wind, and somewhere in the darkness of Pine Ridge Forest, a massive brown bear pushed through the thick branches. The bear's name was Luna, though no human had ever given her that name. She had lost her cub 3 days ago during the storm, and her heart ached with a pain that seemed to tear through her chest. Luna sniffed the air, catching strange scents she had never smelled before. The storm had confused her, washing away familiar trails and leaving her lost in territory she didn't recognize. Her heavy paws splashed through muddy puddles as she approached the strange building with glowing windows. Back in room 314, baby Mia stirred in her sleep. Her tiny fist pushed against the blanket, and she made soft cooing sounds that echoed in the empty room. The hospital's heating system hummed quietly, but something felt wrong in the silence. Babies weren't meant to be alone like this. Luna found an open loading dock door at the back of the hospital. The maintenance crew had propped it open to move equipment, but the storm had driven them inside to wait. The bear's massive frame filled the doorway as she sniffed carefully. The scents here were overwhelming. Cleaning chemicals, medicine, and something else. Something that called to the deepest part of her being. She followed her nose through empty hallways, her claws clicking softly on the polished floors. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting strange shadows that danced around her enormous form. Luna had never been inside a human building before, but fear didn't grip her. Only the pull of something she couldn't understand. In the surgical suite below, Dr. Harrison worked frantically to stop Grace Chen's bleeding. "We need more blood units," he called to his team. "And somebody check on her baby, make sure the nurses know the mother is still in surgery." But his message never reached the 3rd floor. The hospital's communication system had glitched during the storm, leaving gaps in coverage that no one had noticed yet. Luna climbed the stairs slowly, following a scent that grew stronger with each step. It wasn't the scent of her lost cub, but something similar. Something small and helpless that needed protection. Her maternal instincts, raw and powerful from losing her own baby, pulled her forward like an invisible rope. The maternity ward doors were propped open for easy access during shift changes. Luna squeezed through, her thick fur brushing against the door frame. The hallway stretched ahead of her, lined with rooms containing sleeping mothers and babies. But one room called to her more than the others. Room 314. Baby Mia had begun to cry, soft whimpering sounds that grew louder in the empty space. Her tiny arms reached out, searching for comfort that wasn't there. The crying echoed down the hallway, a sound that pierced straight through Luna's grieving heart. The bear approached the doorway slowly, her massive head peering around the corner. Inside, she saw the smallest human she had ever encountered, alone in a strange white box that smelled of sadness and longing. Mia's cries grew stronger, and Luna felt something shift inside her chest. Without thinking, Luna entered the room. Her enormous paws moved carefully across the floor as she approached the crib. The baby's cries softened as she sensed a presence nearby, even though her eyes were still closed. Luna stood beside the crib, looking down at the tiny human. Mia's face was red from crying, and her small fists waved in the air. The bear's heart, heavy with the loss of her own cub, suddenly felt a different kind of pull. This baby needed her. Carefully, so carefully that her movements seemed impossible for such a large creature, Luna lowered herself to the floor beside the crib. Her warm breath created a gentle breeze that seemed to calm the crying infant. Mia's sobs turned to soft hiccups, then to quiet breathing. The bear's massive form curled around the base of the crib like a living fortress. Her thick fur provided warmth that the hospital's sterile environment couldn't offer. Luna's eyes remained open, watching the baby with an intensity that spoke of deep protection. For the first time since losing her cub, Luna felt peace. The ache in her chest didn't disappear, but it changed into something different, something purposeful. This tiny human needed a mother's love, and Luna had so much love with nowhere to put it. Baby Mia's breathing deepened as she fell into the most peaceful sleep of her short life. Her tiny hand dangled through the crib bars, just inches from Luna's thick fur. The bear's gentle snoring created a rumbling lullaby that seemed to wrap around the baby like a warm embrace. Down in the surgical suite, Dr. Harrison finally managed to stop the bleeding. "She's stable," he announced to his team. "Let's get her to recovery." But Grace Chen would sleep for hours before waking up, and David would wait by her bedside, both parents unaware of the miracle happening 3 floors above. Nurse Sandra Martinez finished her paperwork and glanced at the clock. It was almost 3 a.m., and she realized she hadn't checked on the Chen baby in far too long. She grabbed her stethoscope and headed down the hallway toward room 314, completely unprepared for what she was about to discover. The storm outside began to quiet, but inside the hospital the most extraordinary night was just beginning. Sandra Martinez walked slowly down the dimly lit hallway, her soft-soled shoes making barely a whisper against the polished floor. She had been a nurse for 15 years, but tonight felt different somehow. The storm had created an eerie atmosphere throughout the hospital, and the flickering lights didn't help her growing sense of unease. As she approached room 314, Sandra noticed something strange. The usual sounds of a newborn weren't coming from the room. No soft cries, no rustling of blankets, no tiny movements that babies made even in their sleep. Instead, there was a deep, rhythmic sound she couldn't quite identify. She paused outside the door, her hand frozen on the handle. The sound was like breathing, but much deeper and slower than any human breath she had ever heard. Her heart began to beat faster as she pressed her ear against the cool metal door. The breathing continued, steady and peaceful, accompanied by what sounded almost like a gentle rumbling. Sandra had heard that sound before, but not in a hospital. It reminded her of camping trips with her father when she was young, listening to distant sounds in the forest at night. Her training told her to enter the room immediately and check on the baby. But something deeper, some primitive instinct that humans rarely acknowledged anymore, told her to be very, very careful. Sandra slowly turned the handle and pushed the door open just a crack. The sight that greeted her made her freeze completely, her breath catching in her throat like a trapped bird. A massive brown bear lay curled around the base of baby Mia's crib, her thick fur rising and falling with each peaceful breath. The bear's eyes were closed, But even in sleep, her position showed complete protection of the tiny human above her. One enormous paw rested gently near the crib's base, while her massive head pointed toward the door, as if even in sleep she remained alert for any threat. Baby Mia slept more peacefully than Sandra had ever seen a newborn sleep. Her tiny hand had somehow worked its way through the crib bars and was resting against the bear's thick fur. The infant's breathing was calm and steady, synchronized somehow with the great bear's deeper rhythm. Sandra's medical training screamed at her to call security, to get the baby away from this wild animal immediately, but her eyes told her a different story. There was no aggression in the bear's posture, no tension in her massive muscles. Instead, there was something almost sacred about the scene, something that made Sandra's eyes fill with unexpected tears. She had seen many things in her years as a nurse. She had watched parents lose children, had held babies who would never go home, had witnessed the raw power of maternal love in its purest form. But she had never seen anything like this. The bear's ears twitched slightly and Sandra held her breath. Luna's eyes opened slowly, not with the startled alertness of a surprised animal, but with the gentle awareness of a mother checking on her child. The bear's gaze met Sandra's through the crack in the door. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, woman and bear looked at each other. Sandra expected to see wildness, unpredictability, danger. Instead, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. She saw the same look she had witnessed in the eyes of every new mother she had ever attended. Pure, unconditional, protective love. Luna made no aggressive movements. She didn't bare her teeth or raise her massive head in threat. Instead, she seemed to study Sandra with an intelligence that was almost human. The bear's expression seemed to ask a simple question. "Do you understand?" And somehow, incredibly, Sandra did understand. She quietly closed the door and stepped back into the hallway, her hands shaking as she tried to process what she had just witnessed. Her first instinct was to grab the emergency phone and call for help. Security, animal control, the police, anyone who could handle a wild bear in the hospital. But as she reached for her radio, Sandra's hand stopped. The baby had been crying when she left her station over an hour ago. She had heard the soft wails echoing down the hallway and had planned to check on little Mia after finishing her medication rounds. Now, the baby was sleeping more peacefully than any newborn she had ever seen. The bear wasn't hurting the child. If anything, the massive creature seemed to be protecting her, caring for her in a way that defied everything Sandra thought she knew about wild animals. Her radio crackled to life, making her jump. "Sandra, this is Doctor Harrison from surgery. How's the Chen baby doing? The mother is stable now, but she'll be in recovery for several more hours." Sandra stared at the radio in her hand, her finger hovering over the talk button. What could she possibly say? That a wild bear had somehow made its way into the maternity ward and was now sleeping beside a newborn baby. That the most dangerous predator in the region was acting like a surrogate mother to a human infant. "Sandra, are you there?" She pressed the button, her voice barely steady. "The baby is sleeping peacefully, Doctor. Very peacefully, no problems to report." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Sandra ended the communication and slipped the radio back onto her belt, her mind racing with possibilities and consequences. Down the hallway, she heard the elevator doors open. Night security guard Marcus Webb stepped out, making his routine rounds. Marcus was a good man, but he was also very by the book. If he discovered the bear, he would follow protocol without question. The situation would escalate quickly, and Sandra had a terrible feeling that it wouldn't end well for anyone involved. She walked quickly toward Marcus, intercepting him before he could reach room 314. "Hey, Marcus, how's the storm looking outside?" The guard, a heavy-set man in his 50s, adjusted his flashlight on his belt. Finally dying down, thank goodness. Had some weird reports tonight, though. Maintenance said they found muddy paw prints by the loading dock, but they couldn't figure out what kind of animal would be that big. Probably just the storm playing tricks on people's eyes. Sandra's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice casual. You know how storms can make people see things. Hey, could you check the East Wing first tonight? I heard some strange noises from that direction earlier. Marcus nodded and headed toward the opposite end of the hospital. Sandra watched him go, knowing she had bought herself maybe 30 minutes before he would circle back to this area. 30 minutes to figure out what to do about the most impossible situation of her nursing career. She returned to her station and sat down heavily in her chair, staring at the security monitors that showed various hallways throughout the hospital. Room 314 wasn't visible from any of the cameras, a blind spot that had never seemed important until tonight. Sandra pulled up baby Mia's chart on her computer, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. The infant had been born healthy but small, weighing just over 5 pounds. Her mother had experienced complications during delivery, and the family had no other relatives in the area. The baby had been alone for most of the night. Alone until she wasn't. As Sandra sat in the quiet nursing station, she began to remember stories her grandmother used to tell. Old stories from the mountains where her family had lived for generations. Stories about animals that sometimes formed bonds with humans during times of great need. Her grandmother had claimed these stories were true, but Sandra had always dismissed them as folklore. Now, she wasn't so sure. The phone at the nursing station rang, making her jump again. The caller ID showed it was coming from the emergency department. Maternity ward, this is Sandra. Hey Sandra, this is Jake down in emergency. We've got a weird situation developing. Started getting calls about an hour ago from residents near Pine Ridge Forest. Apparently, there's been a mother bear in the area for the past few days, acting really strange. She lost her cub in the storm, and now she's been wandering outside, her normal territory. Sandra's blood turned to ice water. What kind of strange behavior? Well, that's the weird part. Usually, when a mother bear loses a cub, she becomes extremely aggressive. But the reports we're getting describe her as almost lost, like she's searching for something but doesn't know what. Fish and Wildlife is planning to search for her at dawn, try to relocate her back to the deeper forest before she becomes a danger to people. Has anyone actually seen her tonight? Sandra asked, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Not directly, but there have been some unusual tracks found around town. Big ones. The theory is that she's looking for a new den site, maybe somewhere to grieve for her lost cub. Poor thing is probably half out of her mind with maternal instinct and nowhere to put it. Sandra closed her eyes, understanding flooding through her like warm water. Jake, what happens to bears when they relocate them? Depends on how aggressive they are. If she's just wandering and not causing problems, they'll probably tranquilize her and move her about 50 miles deeper into the wilderness. But if she's shown any signs of being dangerous around humans... Jake's voice trailed off. What then? Then they have to put her down, Sandra. Can't risk a grieving mother bear hurting someone. It's not the bear's fault, but human safety comes first. Sandra thanked Jake and hung up the phone, her hands shaking harder now. She looked down the hallway toward room 314, where the most gentle scene she had ever witnessed was taking place. Luna wasn't dangerous. She was heartbroken, just like any mother who had lost her child. And somehow, in her grief, she had found another child who needed her. But if Fish and Wildlife found Luna at the hospital, they would never believe what Sandra had seen. They would see only a wild predator near a helpless human baby. They would act on instinct and training, just as Sandra's own training told her to do. The elevator dinged again, and Sandra's heart sank as she saw Dr. Morrison step out. Dr. Morrison was the head of pediatrics, making an unusual late-night round. He was a kind man, but strict about hospital protocols. If he discovered the situation, he would have no choice but to follow emergency procedures. "Good evening, Sandra. I heard we had some excitement with the Chen baby's mother tonight. Thought I'd check on the little one myself." Sandra stood up quickly, blocking his path down the hallway. "Doctor, the baby is sleeping very peacefully right now. Maybe we shouldn't disturb her?" Dr. Morrison looked at Sandra with surprise. In all the years they had worked together, she had never questioned his decision to check on a patient. "Sandra, is everything all right? You seem nervous." Before she could answer, a sound came from the direction of room 314. It was soft, barely audible, but unmistakable to anyone who had ever heard it before. It was the sound of a large animal, shifting position, the quiet whoosh of thick fur moving against fabric. Dr. Morrison tilted his head, listening. What was that? Sandra's mind raced, searching for any explanation that wouldn't sound completely insane. But before she could speak, baby Mia's voice carried down the hallway. Not crying, not distressed, but making the soft, contented sounds that newborns made when they felt safe and loved. Dr. Morrison smiled. "She sounds peaceful. That's unusual for a baby who's been alone most of the night." He started walking toward room 314 again. Sandra had to make a choice. Let him discover the situation and face the consequences, or trust him with the truth and hope that he would see what she had seen. She took a deep breath and made the most difficult decision of her nursing career. "Dr. Morrison, I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise me that you'll see the whole situation before you react." He stopped walking and turned to face her, concern evident in his expression. "Sandra, what's wrong?" "There's something in room 314 with the baby. Something that shouldn't be there according to every rule and regulation we follow. But something that's giving that child exactly what she needs right now." Dr. Morrison's expression grew serious. "What are you talking about?" Sandra looked down the hallway one more time, thinking about Luna's gentle eyes and baby Mia's peaceful sleep. She thought about the bear's loss and the baby's loneliness, and how somehow they had found each other in the storm. "Doctor, I need you to see something that's going to change everything you think you know about medicine, about healing, and about the bonds that form between mothers and children." She started walking toward room 314, praying that what she was about to show him would save both the baby and the bear, who had become her unlikely guardian. Dr. Morrison followed Sandra down the hallway, his footsteps echoing softly in the dim corridor. The hospital felt different at this hour, quieter and more intimate than during the busy daytime shifts. As they approached room 314, Sandra could feel her heart pounding so hard she was sure the doctor could hear it. "Sandra, you're making me very concerned," Dr. Morrison said quietly. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" Before Sandra could answer, they both heard it again. The soft, rhythmic breathing that was too deep to be human, too peaceful to be threatening. Dr. Morrison stopped walking, his medical instincts immediately alert. "That's not the baby," he whispered. Sandra nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "No, it's not. But doctor, I need you to promise me something. When you see what's in that room, please don't react immediately. Please just observe first." Dr. Morrison had known Sandra Martinez for 12 years. She was one of the most reliable, level-headed nurses he had ever worked with. If she was asking him to trust her judgment in such an unusual way, there had to be a good reason. "All right, Sandra, I trust you. But if there's any danger to the baby—" "There's no danger," Sandra said firmly. "I've been watching for over 30 minutes. There's no danger at all." She pushed the door open, slowly, just wide enough for both of them to see inside. Dr. Morrison looked through the gap, and his entire body went rigid with shock. Luna lay curled around the crib exactly as Sandra had first seen her. But now baby Mia had shifted in her sleep. The infant's tiny arm dangled through the crib bars, her small fingers actually touching the bear's thick fur. Luna's massive head was turned toward the baby, and even in sleep her expression showed complete devotion. Dr. Morrison stared at the scene for a full minute without speaking. Sandra watched his face, seeing the same progression of emotions she had experienced. First shock, then fear, then slowly, incredibly, something like wonder. "How long has this been going on?" he whispered. "I discovered them about 45 minutes ago, but based on how peacefully the baby is sleeping, I think they've been together for hours." Dr. Morrison continued to stare at the impossible scene. His medical training told him to call security immediately, to get the baby away from the wild animal. But his eyes showed him something that challenged everything he thought he knew about predator behavior. "The bear isn't restraining the baby," he observed quietly. "The crib is between them. The baby could move away if she wanted to. But she doesn't want to," Sandra said softly. "Look at her hand. She's choosing to touch the bear's fur, and look at the bear's positioning. She's not trying to get closer to the baby, she's just protecting her space." As if sensing their presence, Luna's eyes opened slowly. But instead of the startled reaction they might have expected, the bear simply looked at them with calm awareness. Her gaze moved from Sandra to Dr. Morrison, studying the new human with the same gentle intelligence Sandra had witnessed earlier. Dr. Morrison took an involuntary step back, but Luna made no aggressive movements. Instead, she seemed to recognize that these humans were there to check on the baby's welfare, just as she was. "This is impossible, Doctor," Morrison breathed. "Bears don't behave this way around humans, especially not around human infants." "This bear does," Sandra replied. "Doctor, I got a call from emergency about an hour ago. There's been a mother bear in the area for the past few days. She lost her cub in the storm." Understanding dawned in Dr. Morrison's eyes. She's grieving. And somehow she found another baby who needed her. They watched as baby Mia stirred slightly in her sleep, making soft, cooing sounds. Luna's ears perked up immediately, and she shifted her position just slightly to be closer to the crib. The movement was so careful, so controlled, that it seemed almost impossible for such a large animal. "My God," Dr. Morrison whispered. "She's actually caring for the baby. That's what I've been trying to tell you. This isn't a dangerous situation. This is—" Sandra paused, searching for the right words. "This is something I've never seen before in all my years of nursing. This is pure maternal instinct crossing species lines." Dr. Morrison pulled out his phone, and Sandra's heart leaped into her throat. "Doctor, please don't call security yet. Let me explain what will happen if you do." He looked at her questioningly, his finger hovering over the screen. "Fish and Wildlife is planning to search for this bear at dawn. If they find her here, they'll assume she's dangerous. They'll either relocate her or—" Sandra's voice broke slightly. "Or they'll put her down. And either way, we'll be separating her from a baby who clearly feels safe with her. Sandra, I understand your concern, but we have protocols. We can't have a wild bear in the hospital no matter how gentle she seems." "But what if there's another way?" Sandra asked desperately. "What if we can find a solution that keeps everyone safe?" Before Dr. Morrison could answer, they heard footsteps coming down the hallway. heavy, measured steps that Sandra recognized immediately. Marcus Webb was making his way back from the East Wing, completing his security rounds. "We need to close this door," Sandra whispered urgently. "If Marcus sees this, he'll call it in immediately." Dr. Morrison hesitated for just a moment, then quietly pulled the door closed. They stood in the hallway, both of them breathing heavily as Marcus approached. "Evening, Dr. Morrison," the security guard said, surprise evident in his voice. "Unusual to see you here this late." "Just checking on a patient, doctor," Morrison replied, his voice remarkably steady. "How are the rounds going, Marcus?" "Pretty quiet, actually, though I did find something strange by the loading dock earlier. Big muddy paw prints, bigger than any dog I've ever seen. Maintenance thinks maybe a raccoon or something got in during the storm, but those prints were way too big for a raccoon." Sandra and Dr. Morrison exchanged glances. "Did you report it?" Dr. Morrison asked. "Not yet. Figured I'd finish my rounds first, see if I found any other signs of an animal in the building. So far, this floor looks clean." Marcus gestured down the hallway toward room 314. "That's good to hear," Dr. Morrison said. "Why don't you finish checking the other floors first? If you find any more evidence, then we can decide whether to call animal control." Marcus nodded and headed toward the elevator. As soon as he was gone, Sandra grabbed Dr. Morrison's arm. "We're running out of time," she said urgently. "Dawn is only a few hours away. Fish and Wildlife will start their search, and if they track her here—" "I know," Dr. Morrison said, running his hand through his hair. "Sandra, what you're asking me to do goes against every safety protocol we have. If something goes wrong, if the bear hurts the baby or anyone else, I'll be responsible." "But what if nothing goes wrong?" Sandra countered. "What if this is exactly what both of them need right now?" Dr. Morrison looked toward room 314, then back at Sandra. "Even if I wanted to help, what could we possibly do? We can't hide a bear in the hospital indefinitely." "Maybe we don't have to," Sandra said, her mind racing. "The baby's parents will be back soon. The mother should be waking up from recovery within the next few hours. Maybe we just need to protect this situation long enough for them to see what we've seen. You want to show the parents their newborn baby sleeping next to a wild bear? I want to show them their baby experiencing the most peaceful sleep of her life, being protected by a creature who understands exactly what she needs." Dr. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with the decision. Finally, he spoke. "Sandra, I've been practicing medicine for 25 years. I've seen a lot of things that don't make sense according to textbooks. But this is different," Sandra finished. "This is something that might change how we think about healing, about connection, about what babies really need to thrive. If we do this, if we protect this situation, we're taking an enormous risk, not just with our careers, but with lives." "I know," Sandra said softly, "but sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all." They stood in the hallway, the weight of the decision heavy between them. Finally, Dr. Morrison made up his mind. "All right, but we do this carefully and we do it smart. I want to monitor the situation closely. Any sign of aggression, any indication that the bear is becoming unstable, and we act immediately." Sandra felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "Thank you, Doctor. You won't regret this." "I hope not," he replied grimly. "Now, how do we keep this quiet until the parents can see for themselves?" Before Sandra could answer, her radio crackled again. This time it was Doctor Harrison from surgery. "Sandra, this is Doctor Harrison. Mrs. Chen is waking up in recovery. She's asking about her baby. Can you give me a status update?" Sandra looked at Dr. Morrison, panic in her eyes. They were about to face their first real test of keeping this secret. How could they possibly explain to a new mother that her baby was doing wonderfully without mentioning the reason why? Dr. Morrison took the radio from Sandra's hand. "Dr. Harrison, this is Dr. Morrison. I'm up here checking on the Chen baby myself. The infant is sleeping very peacefully, more peacefully than I've seen any newborn sleep in recent memory. Tell Mrs. Chen that her daughter is doing beautifully, and that she'll be able to see her very soon." That's wonderful news. Mrs. Chen will be so relieved. She's been worried sick about leaving the baby alone. "The baby hasn't been alone," Dr. Morrison said quietly, catching Sandra's eye. "She's been very well cared for." After ending the communication, Dr. Morrison turned to Sandra. "We need a plan. Mrs. Chen will want to see her baby within the hour. We need to figure out how to handle this situation when she arrives. Maybe," Sandra said slowly, "we let the mother see what we've seen. Maybe we trust that a mother's instincts will understand what's happening here. You want to show a woman who just came out of emergency surgery that her newborn baby is sleeping next to a wild bear? I want to show her that her baby has found exactly what she needed during the scariest night of her short life. I want to show her that sometimes love comes from the most unexpected places." Dr. Morrison looked toward the room 314 again, where the most impossible patient care situation of his career was unfolding. "Sandra, if we do this, we're betting everything on the hope that human nature and animal nature can recognize each other when it really matters." "Sometimes," Sandra said softly, "that's the only bet worth making." They both jumped as the elevator doors opened again, but this time it wasn't Marcus or another doctor. It was David Chen, baby Mia's father, looking exhausted and worried as he stepped off the elevator. "Excuse me," he said, approaching them. "I'm looking for my daughter. My wife just woke up and she's asking about the baby. Room 314? Sandra and Dr. Morrison looked at each other, both realizing that their time for planning had just run out. They were about to face the ultimate test of whether love could truly transcend the boundaries of species and fear. "Mr. Chen," Dr. Morrison said carefully, "your daughter is in room 314, and she's doing very well, but before you go in, there's something we need to prepare you for." David's face immediately filled with concern. "Is something wrong? Is she hurt?" "No," Sandra said quickly. "She's not hurt at all. In fact, she's probably safer and more content than any baby in this hospital right now. But the situation is unusual." "What do you mean, unusual?" Dr. Morrison took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of both baby Mia and Luna the bear. "Mr. Chen, your daughter hasn't been alone tonight. She's had a guardian, someone who's been protecting her and caring for her. But that guardian isn't exactly what you might expect." David's confusion was evident. "What are you talking about? Who's been with my baby?" Sandra stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Mr. Chen, what we're about to show you is going to challenge everything you think you know about protection, about care, and about the bonds that form between those who need love and those who have love to give." "You're scaring me," David said, his voice rising slightly. "I want to see my daughter. Now." Dr. Morrison nodded. "Of course you do, and you're going to see her. But first, I need you to promise me something. When you see what's in that room, please don't react with fear. React with your heart, with your instincts as a father who wants what's best for his child." David stared at them both, clearly thinking they had lost their minds. "Just show me my baby." Sandra walked to the door of room 314 and placed her hand on the handle. "Mr. Chen, your daughter is about to teach you something about love that you'll never forget." She opened the door slowly, and David Chen saw his newborn daughter sleeping more peacefully than any baby he had ever seen, her tiny hand resting against the fur of the gentlest wild creature he could never have imagined. David Chen's world stopped completely. Every thought, every breath, every heartbeat seemed to freeze as his mind tried to process what his eyes were showing him. His newborn daughter, barely 12 hours old, lay sleeping in her hospital crib while a massive brown bear curled protectively around the base, creating a living fortress of warmth and safety. For several seconds, David couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink. His father's instincts screamed at him to rush forward and snatch his baby away from danger, but something deeper held him frozen in place. The bear wasn't threatening his daughter. The bear was protecting her. "What the dot?" David's voice came out as barely a whisper. "What is that?" Sandra placed a gentle hand on his arm. "That's Luna. She's a mother bear who lost her cub in the storm 3 days ago. She found your daughter tonight, and she's been caring for her ever since." David's legs felt weak. He gripped the doorframe to steady himself, his eyes never leaving the impossible scene before him. This can't be real. This can't be happening. Dr. Morrison stepped beside him, his voice calm and professional. "Mr. Chen, I know this is shocking. I had the same reaction when Sandra showed me. But look at your daughter. Really look at her." David forced himself to focus on baby Mia instead of the enormous predator beside her. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat for an entirely different reason. His daughter wasn't just sleeping. She was sleeping with a peace and contentment he had never seen in a newborn before. Her tiny face was completely relaxed, her breathing deep and steady, her small body perfectly still in the kind of sleep that spoke of absolute security. "She's so calm," David whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "I've never seen her sleep like that." "That's because she's never felt this safe before," Sandra said softly. "Luna has been here for hours, just watching over her, protecting her. Your daughter isn't afraid. Look at her hand." David looked more closely and saw that his daughter's tiny fingers were actually woven into Luna's thick fur, as if she had deliberately reached out to touch this gentle giant. The sight made his knees weak with emotion. "But how is this possible?" David asked, tears beginning to form in his eyes. "Bears are supposed to be dangerous, especially mother bears who've lost their cubs." "Usually, yes," Dr. Morrison agreed. "But grief can do strange things to maternal instincts. Instead of making Luna aggressive, losing her cub seems to have made her protective of all babies, even human ones." As if sensing the attention focused on her, Luna opened her eyes slowly. David tensed, expecting to see wildness or aggression, but instead found himself looking into the most gentle, intelligent eyes he had ever seen in an animal. Luna studied him for a long moment, and David had the strangest feeling that she was evaluating him, determining whether he was worthy of the precious child she had been guarding. Then Luna did something that made David's heart skip a beat. She looked down at baby Mia, then back at David, and made a soft, low sound. Not a growl or a threat, but something almost like a greeting, as if she were introducing him to his own daughter. "She knows," David breathed. "She knows I'm Mia's father." "Animals are incredibly intuitive," Sandra said. "She can probably smell your connection to the baby, hear the similarity in your heartbeat and stress patterns. She's acknowledging you as part of Mia's family." David took a tentative step into the room, his movements slow and careful. Luna watched him but showed no signs of alarm. Instead, she seemed to approve of his cautious approach, recognizing the behavior of a father who understood the need to be gentle around babies. Can I get closer?" David asked. Dr. Morrison nodded. move slowly. Let her see that you're not a threat to the baby." David entered the room completely, his heart pounding as he approached his daughter's crib. Luna's massive head tracked his movement, but her posture remained relaxed and protective rather than defensive. When David reached the crib and looked down at his sleeping daughter, Luna made that soft sound again, as if giving him permission to be near his own child. "Hi, baby girl," David whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Daddy's here." At the sound of her father's voice, baby Mia stirred slightly but didn't wake. Her tiny hand tightened its grip on Luna's fur, and she made a soft cooing sound that seemed to communicate complete contentment. David reached out tentatively to touch his daughter's face, and as he did, his hand accidentally brushed against Luna's thick fur. The bear didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, she seemed to understand that David was another protector, another being who loved this tiny human with fierce devotion. "This is impossible," David said again, but this time his voice was filled with awe rather than disbelief. "She's actually bonded with my daughter." "Mr. Chen," Sandra said quietly, "there's something else you need to know. Fish and Wildlife is planning to search for Luna at dawn. If they find her here, they'll assume she's dangerous. They might relocate her or they'll kill her," David finished, his voice suddenly hard with understanding. "Yes," Dr. Morrison confirmed. "We've been trying to figure out how to protect this situation, but we're running out of time." David looked down at his daughter, still sleeping peacefully in the protection of her unlikely guardian, and felt something shift inside his chest. This bear had cared for his child when no one else could. Luna had given his daughter something precious, the feeling of being safe and loved during the most vulnerable hours of her life. "What time is it?" David asked. Sandra checked her watch. "Almost 4 a.m. Dawn is about 2 hours away." "And Grace? When will she be able to see Mia?" "She should be alert enough to visit within the next hour," Dr. Morrison replied. "The question is, what do we tell her? And what do we do about the Fish and Wildlife search?" Before David could answer, they heard footsteps in the hallway again, but this time the footsteps were accompanied by voices. Multiple voices, and they were getting closer. Sandra peered out into the hallway and her heart sank. "It's Dr. Patterson from hospital administration, and he's got someone with him, someone in a uniform." Dr. Morrison looked grim. "At 4 a.m.? That can't be good." They could hear the conversation now as the voices approached. "Reported tracks throughout the building," an official-sounding voice was saying. "We got a call from your security about unusual animal signs. We need to do a sweep of the entire hospital." "I appreciate your concern, Officer Martinez," Dr. Patterson was replying. "But I'm sure it's nothing serious. Probably just a raccoon or something small that got in during the storm." "Ma'am, these tracks aren't from a raccoon. They're from something much larger. Possibly a bear. We need to check every room, especially areas where there might be vulnerable patients." Sandra's face went white. "It's animal control. Someone called them." David looked down at his daughter and Luna, panic rising in his chest. "What happens if they find her?" "They'll dart her immediately," Sandra said quietly. "Standard protocol when dealing with a wild animal near humans. They won't stop to observe her behavior or consider that she might not be dangerous." Dr. Morrison was thinking fast. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 5 minutes before they reach this floor," Sandra estimated. "They're starting their search on the ground level and working their way up." David made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "We don't let them find her." "Mr. Chen, what are you suggesting?" Dr. Morrison asked. I'm suggesting that this bear saved my daughter's life tonight. Maybe not from physical danger, but from something else, from being alone and scared during the most important night of her life. I'm not going to let them hurt her for that. But how can we possibly hide a full-grown bear? Sandra asked desperately. David looked around the room, his mind racing. The storage room next door? Is it empty? Yes, but David, we can't ask Luna to move. She might not cooperate, and even if she did, the noise might wake other patients. Then we don't ask her, David said firmly. We trust her. He knelt down beside Luna, looking directly into her intelligent eyes. Luna, I know you can understand me somehow. Those people coming up here don't understand what you've done for my daughter. They're going to try to hurt you if they find you here, but I won't let that happen. Luna tilted her massive head, listening to David's voice with an attention that was almost human. You've protected my baby all night, David continued, his voice growing stronger. Now I'm going to protect you, but I need you to trust me the way Mia trusted you. As if she understood every word, Luna slowly began to move. She rose to her full height, an intimidating sight that made everyone in the room hold their breath, but her movements remained gentle and controlled. She looked down at baby Mia one more time, and David could swear he saw something like love in her expression. Then Luna padded quietly to the door, pausing to look back at the sleeping baby. David opened the door to the storage room next door, and Luna disappeared inside without making a sound. I can't believe that just worked, Sandra whispered. She understood, David said simply. She knew we were trying to help her. The voices in the hallway were getting closer now. They could hear Dr. Patterson explaining hospital layout to the animal control officer. Mr. Chen, Dr. Morrison said urgently, what's our story? How do we explain why your daughter is sleeping so peacefully? David looked down at baby Mia, who was beginning to stir without Luna's comforting presence nearby. We tell them the truth, that my daughter had the best night's sleep of her life because she felt safe and loved. They'll want to know why, Sandra pointed out. Then we tell them, David said, picking up his daughter for the first time since her birth. We tell them that sometimes the most important thing a baby needs isn't medicine or technology. Sometimes all they need is someone who understands that protecting children is the most important job in the world. Baby Mia opened her eyes for the first time since David had arrived, and he was amazed to see that she looked alert and content instead of cranky and fussy like most newborns. The peaceful night with Luna had given his daughter something precious, a foundation of security that seemed to radiate from her tiny being. Sir, we need to check this room, a voice said from the hallway. Dr. Patterson knocked on the door. Dr. Morrison? I have Officer Martinez from Animal Control here. They need to do a quick sweep of the maternity ward. David looked at Sandra and Dr. Morrison, then at the storage room door where Luna was hiding. In just a few moments, they would either successfully protect the bear who had cared for his daughter, or they would watch her be captured and possibly killed for the crime of showing love. Mr. Chen, Sandra whispered, are you sure about this? David held his daughter close, feeling her small body warm and relaxed against his chest. Luna took care of my baby when no one else could. Now it's my turn to take care of her. He walked to the door, his daughter in his arms, and prepared to face whatever consequences came from protecting the gentlest predator any of them had ever encountered. But as he reached for the door handle, baby Mia did something that stopped everyone in their tracks. She made a sound, not a cry or a whimper, but a soft, questioning call that seemed to be looking for someone who was no longer there. She was calling for Luna. And from the storage room next door they heard a soft, almost silent response. Luna's gentle rumbling acknowledgement that she had heard the baby's call and was still nearby, still protecting, still caring from whatever distance was necessary to keep them both safe. David opened the door to face animal control, knowing that the most extraordinary night of his life was about to become even more complicated. Dr. Patterson stood in the hallway with a stern-looking woman in a khaki uniform. Officer Martinez from Animal Control was tall and athletic, with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who dealt with dangerous wildlife situations regularly. Her hand rested casually on a tranquilizer gun attached to her belt, and her eyes immediately began scanning the room behind David. "Mr. Chen, I presume?" Dr. Patterson said. "I'm sorry to disturb you during this time with your new daughter, but we have a potential safety situation that requires immediate attention." "What kind of safety situation?" David asked, trying to keep his voice steady while baby Mia stirred in his arms. Officer Martinez stepped forward, her trained eyes taking in every detail of the hospital room. "Sir, we've been tracking a large bear through the area tonight. We have evidence that she may have entered this building. We need to search every room to ensure patient safety." David felt his heart hammering against his ribs, but he forced himself to remain calm. "A bear in the hospital? That seems unlikely." "I thought so too, Doctor." Patterson agreed. "But apparently there are tracks throughout the building, and our security guard reported some unusual sounds earlier tonight." From the storage room next door, there was complete silence. David prayed that Luna would remain hidden and quiet, understanding somehow that her life depended on it. Officer Martinez's attention was focused on baby Mia, who seemed remarkably alert and content for a newborn. "Your daughter seems very calm for a baby who's been alone most of the night." "She hasn't been alone," David said carefully. "She's had excellent care from the nursing staff." Sandra stepped forward, her voice professional and confident. "I've been checking on baby Mia regularly throughout my shift. She's been sleeping very peacefully." Dr. Morrison nodded in agreement. "I came up to check on her myself about an hour ago. She's one of the most content newborns I've seen in recent memory." Officer Martinez walked around the room, examining the floor, the windows, and the corners where an animal might have left signs of its presence. David watched her search, knowing that Luna had been lying in this exact spot for hours and praying that there weren't obvious traces of her presence. "The tracks we found indicate a large female bear, probably weighing around 350 pounds, Officer Martinez explained as she continued her search. "She lost her cub in the recent storm, which makes her particularly unpredictable. A grieving mother bear can be extremely dangerous, especially around other young." David felt a flash of anger at the description. Luna wasn't dangerous. She was heartbroken. But he kept his expression neutral, knowing that showing any emotional investment in the bear's welfare would raise suspicions. "Have you found any actual evidence that this bear was in the hospital?" Dr. Morrison asked. "Muddy paw prints in several hallways, scratches on a few doors where she might have been trying to get into rooms, and—" Officer Martinez paused, kneeling down beside the crib where baby Mia had been sleeping just minutes earlier. "Interesting." David's blood turned to ice as he watched the officer examine the area around the crib more closely. "What is it?" Dr. Patterson asked. Officer Martinez stood up, holding something in her gloved hand. It was a single strand of thick brown fur. "This definitely came from a large bear, and it was found right here next to the baby's crib." The room fell silent. David could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears, and baby Mia seemed to sense the tension, making a soft whimpering sound. "That could have come from anywhere," Sandra said quickly. "The storm brought all kinds of debris into the building." "No," Officer Martinez said grimly. "This fur is fresh, and it's definitely from a live animal. This bear was in this room, and recently She looked directly at David. "Sir, I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you see anything unusual when you arrived to check on your daughter?" David looked down at baby Mia, who was gazing up at him with the most trusting eyes he had ever seen. He thought about Luna's gentle care, about the peaceful sleep his daughter had experienced, about the bond that had formed between a grieving mother bear and a newborn human baby. "Officer Martinez," David said slowly, "what I saw when I came to check on my daughter was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed in my life." "Mr. Chen, this is very serious, Doctor," Patterson interrupted. "If there was a bear in this room with your newborn daughter, then my daughter was in the care of the most gentle, protective creature I could ever imagine," David said firmly, making his decision. "Yes, there was a bear in this room, and yes, she was with my baby, and my daughter has never been safer in her entire life." The silence that followed was deafening. Officer Martinez stared at David as if he had lost his mind, while Dr. Patterson's face went pale with shock. "Mr. Chen," Officer Martinez said carefully, "are you telling me that you found a wild bear with your newborn baby, and you didn't immediately call for help? I'm telling you that I found a mother who had lost her own child, caring for mine with more tenderness than I've ever seen from any human," David replied. "And instead of being grateful that my daughter was protected and loved during the scariest night of her life, you want to hunt down and kill the creature who saved her." "Sir, bears are wild animals," Officer Martinez said, her hand moving instinctively toward her tranquilizer gun. "They're unpredictable and dangerous, especially around human children." "This bear isn't," Sandra said, stepping beside David. "I watched her for over an hour. She was protective, gentle, and completely focused on the baby's welfare." Dr. Morrison joined them. "As a pediatrician with 25 years of experience, I can tell you that I've never seen a newborn as calm and content as this baby is right now. Whatever happened in this room tonight had a profoundly positive effect on this child." Officer Martinez looked around the room with new eyes, processing what she was being told. "You're all asking me to believe that a wild bear, a predator that could kill a human with a single swipe of her paw, was somehow babysitting a newborn infant? We're asking you to believe what we saw with our own eyes," David said. "And we're asking you to consider that maybe, just maybe, the instinct to protect and nurture young isn't limited to humans." Before Officer Martinez could respond, they heard voices coming from down the hallway. Multiple voices, and they were approaching fast. "That's the Fish and Wildlife team," Officer Martinez said, checking her radio. "They're starting their search on this floor." Sandra grabbed David's arm. "They have authorization to use lethal force if they consider the bear an immediate threat." "Where is she now?" Officer Martinez asked directly. David looked at Sandra and Dr. Morrison, then made another decision that would change everything. "She's hiding, because she's smart enough to know that humans don't always understand the difference between protection and predation. Mr. Chen, I need you to tell me exactly where this bear is located." "I need you to promise me something first," David said, holding his daughter closer. "I need you to see her the way we saw her. I need you to observe her behavior before you make any decisions about what kind of threat she represents." Officer Martinez was clearly struggling with the most unusual situation of her career. "Sir, I can't make promises about the safety protocols for dealing with wild animals." From down the hallway, they could hear the Fish and Wildlife team getting closer. Heavy boots, radio chatter, and the sound of equipment being moved. "They're armed with rifles," Dr. Patterson said nervously. "This could escalate very quickly." David made a decision that terrified and inspired him at the same time. "Officer Martinez, I'm going to show you something that will change how you think about wildlife, about motherhood, and about the connections that can form between species when love is involved. He walked to the storage room door and placed his hand on the handle. But I need you to promise me that you'll watch with your heart as well as your training. Mr. Chen, don't open that door, Dr. Patterson said urgently. If there's a bear in there. Then we're about to meet the most remarkable creature any of us will ever encounter, David finished. Officer Martinez drew her tranquilizer gun but kept it lowered. If this animal shows any sign of aggression, she won't, Sandra said with complete confidence. But you need to understand something. Luna isn't just any bear. She's a mother who lost her child and found another one to love. If you approach her with fear and weapons, you'll create the very danger you're trying to prevent. The voices in the hallway were getting closer. They had maybe 2 minutes before the Fish and Wildlife team reached room 314. David looked down at baby Mia, who had been watching the entire exchange with the alert awareness that seemed so unusual for such a young infant. What do you think, sweetheart? Should we introduce Officer Martinez to your friend Luna? Baby Mia made a soft cooing sound, and, incredibly, from behind the storage room door, they heard a gentle rumbling response. Luna had heard the baby's voice and was responding, even from her hiding place. Officer Martinez's eyes widened as she heard the sound. She's really in there. She's really in there, David confirmed. And she's been listening to everything we've said. She knows we're trying to protect her, just like she protected my daughter. Sir, this is against every protocol I've ever learned. Sometimes, Dr. Morrison said quietly, the most important healing happens outside of protocols. David turned the handle slowly, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether Luna lived or died, whether this extraordinary bond would be preserved or destroyed. As the door opened, they saw Luna sitting calmly in the corner of the storage room, her massive form somehow managing to look gentle and non-threatening despite her size. When she saw baby Mia in David's arms, her entire demeanor brightened, and she made that soft rumbling sound again. Officer Martinez stared at the bear in complete shock. She's not showing any signs of aggression. Look at her eyes, Sandra said softly. Look at how she's responding to the baby. Luna's gaze was fixed on baby Mia with an expression of pure love and concern. When the infant made a small sound, Luna immediately leaned forward slightly, her attention completely focused on the baby's welfare. My God, Officer Martinez whispered. She really is protecting her. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder in the hallway. The Fish and Wildlife team was almost at their location. Officer Martinez, David said urgently, you have a choice to make. You can follow protocol and allow armed men to capture or kill a creature who has shown nothing but love and protection toward a human baby. Or you can help us find a way to preserve something extraordinary. Officer Martinez looked at Luna, then at baby Mia, then at the faces of the 3 humans who had risked everything to protect this unlikely bond. Tell me what you want me to do, she said quietly. But before anyone could answer, the Fish and Wildlife team arrived at room 314, their heavy boots echoing in the hallway as they prepared to search for the most dangerous bear they had ever tracked. A bear who was, at that very moment, gazing at a human baby with more love than most humans ever experienced in their entire lives. The Fish and Wildlife team rounded the corner with military precision, led by Captain Rodriguez, a weathered man whose years of tracking dangerous wildlife had left him cautious and quick to act. Behind him followed 3 officers, each carrying high-powered tranquilizer rifles and emergency medical equipment. Officer Martinez, what's the situation? Captain Rodriguez called out as he approached room 314. Officer Martinez looked at David, who was still holding baby Mia, then at Luna sitting peacefully in the storage room, then back at her superior. In that moment, she made a decision that would define the rest of her career. "Captain, we have a very unusual situation here," she began carefully. "I've located the bear, but the circumstances are extraordinary." Captain Rodriguez's hand moved instinctively to his weapon. "Where is she? Is she contained?" "She's voluntarily contained herself," Officer Martinez said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "Captain, I need you to see something before we proceed with standard protocol. Martinez, if there's a dangerous animal in this hospital—" "Sir, with respect, this animal isn't dangerous. She's protective. There's a significant difference." David stepped forward, baby Mia calm and alert in his arms. "Captain Rodriguez, my name is David Chen. This is my daughter, born 12 hours ago. She's been in the care of your bear all night, and she's never been safer." Captain Rodriguez stared at David as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "Sir, did you just tell me that a wild bear has been caring for your newborn baby?" "I'm telling you that a mother who lost her own child found mine and gave her something no medical equipment could provide," David said firmly. "She gave her love." Dr. Morrison stepped beside David. "Captain, I'm Dr. Morrison, head of pediatrics. In my professional medical opinion, this infant has experienced the most beneficial night of care I've ever witnessed. Her vital signs, her alertness, her emotional state, everything indicates that she's thrived under this bear's protection." Captain Rodriguez looked skeptical, but before he could respond, baby Mia made a soft cooing sound that echoed down the hallway. From the storage room came an immediate, gentle rumbling response, Luna acknowledging her tiny charge. The entire Fish and Wildlife team froze at the sound. "Did that bear just respond to the baby?" one of the officers asked in amazement. "She's been responding to Mia all night," Sandra explained. "They formed a bond that transcends everything we thought we knew about interspecies relationships." Captain Rodriguez had seen many things in his 20 years of wildlife management, but nothing had prepared him for this. "I need to see this animal." Officer Martinez nodded toward the storage room. "She's in there, Captain, but sir, I need you to approach this differently than we normally would. This bear understands that we're trying to help her. She's cooperated completely. She moved into that room voluntarily to avoid detection when she heard us coming." "Bears don't cooperate," Captain Rodriguez said flatly. "This one does," David replied. "Would you like to meet her?" What happened next would be talked about in wildlife management circles for decades to come. Captain Rodriguez, a man trained to see bears as dangerous predators requiring immediate containment, slowly approached the storage room door. David opened it carefully, and Luna raised her massive head to look at the new human. But instead of showing fear or aggression, she seemed to study Captain Rodriguez with the same gentle intelligence she had shown everyone else. Then she looked at baby Mia in David's arms and made a soft, questioning sound. "She's asking about the baby," David said with certainty. "She wants to know if Mia is okay." Captain Rodriguez watched as Luna's entire attention focused on the infant's welfare. The bear's massive size was undeniable, but so was her gentleness. When baby Mia made a small sound, Luna immediately leaned forward with concern, her expression showing nothing but protective love. "This is impossible," Captain Rodriguez whispered. "Bears don't behave this way." "This bear does," Officer Martinez said. "Captain, what if everything we thought we knew about grief and maternal instinct was incomplete? What if love really can cross a species' lines when it's needed most?" As if summoned by some unseen force, footsteps approached from the elevator. David turned to see his wife Grace being wheeled down the hallway in a wheelchair, pushed by a recovery nurse. Grace Chen looked pale and exhausted from her emergency surgery, but her eyes were bright with determination to see her baby. "David?" Grace called weakly. "Where's Mia?" "I need to see her." The group around room 314 suddenly realized they were about to face the ultimate test. How do you explain to a woman who just survived emergency surgery that her newborn baby has spent the night in the care of a wild bear? David walked toward his wife, baby Mia peaceful in his arms. "Grace, our daughter is perfect. She's healthy. She's alert. And she's experienced something miraculous." "What do you mean?" Grace asked, confusion evident in her voice as she noticed the crowd of uniformed officers surrounding her baby's room. David knelt beside his wife's wheelchair, his voice gentle but filled with emotion. "Grace, Mia wasn't alone tonight. She had a guardian, someone who understood exactly what she needed and gave it to her without asking for anything in return." Before Grace could respond, baby Mia looked toward the storage room and made that soft cooing sound again. Luna's immediate rumbling response echoed from the doorway, and Grace's eyes widened with shock. "David? What was that sound?" "That," David said softly, "was love answering love." He helped Grace move closer to the storage room, where she could see Luna sitting peacefully in the corner. The bear's eyes immediately focused on Grace, and something extraordinary happened. Luna made a soft, almost respectful sound, as if greeting the mother of the child she had been protecting. Grace stared at the massive bear in complete silence for nearly a minute. Then tears began streaming down her face. "She's been taking care of our baby," Grace whispered. "All night," David confirmed. "Mia slept better than any newborn I've ever seen. She felt safe, loved, protected." Grace looked at her daughter, then at Luna, then back at her husband. "She lost her own baby, didn't she?" 3 days ago in the storm," Sandra explained gently. Grace's face filled with understanding and compassion. She was a mother now. She understood the devastating pain of potentially losing a child. She gave our baby what she couldn't give her own. Captain Rodriguez watched this exchange with growing amazement. The mother of the human infant wasn't afraid of the bear. She was grateful. "Captain," Grace said, looking directly at him, "please don't hurt her. She saved my daughter's life tonight, not from physical danger, but from something worse. She saved her from being alone when she needed love most." Captain Rodriguez looked around at the faces surrounding him. A father who defended the bear that had cared for his child. A mother who was grateful rather than afraid. Medical professionals who testified to the positive effects of this impossible relationship. And an animal control officer who had witnessed firsthand the gentleness of a creature that should have been dangerous. For the first time in his career, Captain Rodriguez made a decision based on what his heart told him rather than what his manual required. "Stand down," he told his team quietly. "Sir?" one of the officers questioned. "I said stand down. This animal is not a threat to public safety." Officer Martinez smiled with relief. "What are your orders, Captain?" Captain Rodriguez looked at Luna, who was watching baby Mia with unwavering devotion. "Our orders are to ensure the safety and welfare of both the human population and the wildlife in our care. This bear isn't threatening anyone. She's protecting someone. But, sir, protocol states ... Protocol doesn't account for love," Captain Rodriguez said firmly, "and what I'm seeing here is the purest form of love I've ever witnessed." David felt tears streaming down his face as he realized what was happening. "Captain, What does this mean for Luna?" "It means," Captain Rodriguez said slowly, "that we're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to trust that this bear knows what's best for herself and for this baby." Dr. Patterson, who had been silent through most of the exchange, finally spoke up. "Captain, what exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that we allow this bear to make her own choice about when to leave. She came here looking for something and she found it. When she's ready to return to the wild, she'll go. Until then, she's not bothering anyone, and she's certainly not threatening anyone." Grace reached out from her wheelchair and gently touched David's hand. Can I thank her?" David helped Grace move closer to Luna, who watched the approach of the baby's mother with calm interest. When Grace spoke, her voice was soft and filled with emotion. "Luna, I don't know if you can understand me, but I want you to know that you gave my daughter something precious tonight. You gave her love when she needed it most. You showed her that the world can be safe and gentle. Thank you." Luna tilted her massive head slightly, as if acknowledging Grace's words. Then she looked at baby Mia one more time and made a soft sound that seemed to say goodbye. Slowly, gracefully, Luna rose to her full height and walked out of the storage room. The entire group watched in silence as she padded down the hallway toward the elevator, moving with the dignity of a creature who had completed an important mission. At the elevator, Luna paused and looked back one final time at baby Mia. The infant seemed to sense the bear's gaze and turned her head, making one last soft sound. Luna's rumbling response echoed through the hallway like a blessing. Then the elevator doors opened, and Luna disappeared inside, returning to the wild from which she had come. 6 months later, David and Grace Chen received a call from Fish and Wildlife. Luna had been spotted in the deep forest with a new cub, a young bear she had adopted after its mother was killed by poachers. She was raising the orphaned cub with the same gentle devotion she had shown baby Mia. Baby Mia, now 6 months old, was the most content, alert infant her pediatrician had ever seen. She slept peacefully through the night, smiled more than any baby her age, and seemed to possess an unusual sense of security and trust in the world around her. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind was just right, David and Grace could swear they heard a distant rumbling in the forest, the sound of a mother bear who had learned that love knows no boundaries, teaching that same lesson to another orphaned child who needed to know that the world could be safe and gentle. The staff at Riverside General Hospital never forgot the night when love transcended species, when a grieving mother found purpose in protecting another's child, and when a newborn baby learned that sometimes the most powerful medicine is simply knowing that someone cares enough to stay close and keep watch through the darkest hours. In the end, Luna had given them all a gift far greater than medical science could provide. She had shown them that the instinct to protect and nurture the vulnerable is universal, that love can bridge any gap, and that sometimes the most extraordinary healing happens when we open our hearts to connections we never thought possible. And baby Mia Chen grew up knowing, deep in her soul, that she had once been loved by the gentlest giant in the forest, and that this love had shaped her into someone who would spend her own life protecting those who needed protection, just as Luna had protected her during the most important night of her life. The story of the bear and the baby became legend at Riverside General, a reminder to every doctor, nurse, and parent who heard it that love, in all its forms, remains the most powerful force for healing in the world.